Our first two speakers, come on up, guys and girls, guy and girl. A lot of people in New York know what Staten Island is, but how many of you really visited? Well, Lorraine Scanny is a brave woman because she took the time out as a mom, as an American mom, to help launch the Staten Island Tea Party. And that's a great job you do out there. Frank Santarpia is another guy. He and Lorraine are a team. I think much like you and I are a team, Kellen. And I want them to talk to you now, not just about what they do on Staten Island, but what they believe in. And Kellen and I will step off the stage.
Hello, New York! Yeah! I want to thank Kellen and David bringing the tea parties together in New York City. That's wonderful. My name is Lorraine Scanny. I'm married, the mother of 2 children, and I live in Staten Island, where I was born and raised. Where's Staten Island?
Staten Island!
A year ago, I never dreamed the day would come when I would cease to be anything more than a mother and a wife. I never could imagine I would become a political activist. Life seemed normal. We went to work, took care of our families and homes, and went about our daily business. But the steady and scary march of events had left me no choice but to get involved. The threat to my children and to all future generations became too much to ignore. When I heard that tea parties were being organized around the country, I did what hundreds of thousands of other Americans did. I went online and found the nearest one. I stumbled onto a website that listed all the events that were being organized, and lo and behold, there was a rally being organized on Staten Island. The contact information supplied an email address and a name, Frank Santarpia.
I wandered onto that website about 2 hours before Lorraine, and I managed to break completely out of my comfort zone, and I listed myself as an organizer. After all, they said that no experience was necessary, and Lord knows I had absolutely no experience. I got my very first response at around 7 p.m. It was an email from Lorraine. And that night, 2 total strangers, via the internet and over the telephone, formed the nucleus of what would become the Staten Island Tea Party. Then, a little over a year ago, I wrote my first letter to the editor. And in it, we announced that we were organizing a tax day tea party across from our congressman's office on New Dorp Lane in Staten Island. Certainly it would be the first of its kind in our borough, and certainly it would be our first attempt at political activism. Lorraine and I had no experience. I'm fond of saying that I've never organized anything more complicated than my sock drawer. Lorraine was raising her family on one end of Staten Island, and I was planning my retirement on the other. You could not find 2 more dissimilar individuals, but we were bound by our political beliefs. We had no money, we had no mailing list, we had no website, we had no organizational skills, and we had no political activism in our backgrounds. In short, we were absolutely perfect for the Tea Party movement.
The initial reactions to our announcements were comments by the naysayers. They laughed at us and wondered if we could even turn out a dozen people. We wondered if we could turn out a dozen people. We dug into our own pockets and placed a couple of small ads in our local newspaper. I can't even imagine if anybody even saw those ads. We wrote a few more letters to get some free publicity, and Frank actually went online and researched how to write a press release. We got a small article out of that. We got a sound system from the police department, but we had no sound, so we dug into our pockets again and rented a microphone, some speakers, and a generator. We had no podium, so my husband built one out of some 2x4s and plywood. Frank's wife, Jean Marie, prepared to collect names and email addresses. We thought if by some miracle people turned out, we might even establish a small mailing list. The first committed individuals that contacted us became our staff. And we call them our staff, but they are really our dedicated partners. And they stand with us still today. They're all here tonight. We had no guest speakers, so we prepared to speak ourselves, and we vowed that anyone who showed up and wanted to speak would get the microphone, as long as they weren't a politician.
It was a tiny crowd by these standards, 350 people, but it was huge by Staten Island standards. And it was gratifying and it was exhilarating. But if there's really only one word I could use to describe that day, it would be transformational. Transformational not only for us, but I believe it was transformational for the 350 frustrated, angry, and frightened people that were there. Transformational because we all realized that we were not alone in the way we felt about our country. That day we realized that we were not alone in fearing an administration that had bragged about bringing fundamental change to our country that we did not want or need. And that change was being shoved down our throat anyway, despite the fact that it went against the will of the people, and more importantly, without regard to the Constitution of the United States. And we were not alone in vowing that we would push back. That day, we transformed 350 ordinary Americans into political activists. The comment that I heard most often that day from just plain old ordinary folk was, "I have never done anything like this before." Well, neither had I, and neither had Lorraine, and neither had anybody else that was alive in America that day, because the last time it had been done was 237 years ago in Boston Harbor.
We could stand here tonight and tell you things you already know about legislation and policy and the wrong direction our country is taking, but we won't. Others will be here and they will say it much more eloquently than we ever could. But what we can do, as well as any man or woman here, is explain that each and every one of you can make a difference. Since that first Tea Party, we have quadrupled our membership, we have shaken the political foundations of Staten Island, and we have done numerous rallies. Over the course of the last year, we have sent almost 20 chartered buses to Washington. We have met frequently with our congressman, who we are proud to say is the only one in the New York delegation to vote no on health care. I like to think we had something to do with that.
To accomplish these things, you don't need fame, you don't need to be rich, and you don't need prior experience. Lord knows we did not have any of that. To make a difference, you only need a passion for freedom and for individual liberties. You need a deep-seated love of your country, and you need the willingness to stand up and speak out, or sit down and write a letter to the editor. So this is what we can offer you tonight. Lorraine and I can hold ourselves up as an example of what one or two ordinary citizens can accomplish if they set their minds to it. After all, this is America, and when we set our minds to getting something done, we cannot and will not be stopped. Now let me close with this message, and this is a message for those who should be here, listening and paying attention, but who, of course, are not here. Washington, we are coming for you. In a few months, we are going to throw you out of Congress. And in a few short years, we are going to throw you out of the White House. And when we are done, we will have returned this country to the ideals and the principles that made the United States of America the greatest force for good in the history of the world. That is our message. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you, Frank. Just another example of what ordinary Americans do on a daily